Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. And on a Wednesday night, I'm always joined by the legends, Malcolm MacDonald and John Gibson. How are you, lads?
All right, Steve. Lovely to see
Nice
you.
to see
And
you,
hi, John.
Great to see you, lads. Big shout out to Q-Tech, who've chipped in a little bit towards StreamYard to help us keep broadcasting these shows. Thank you very much. They make snooker tables and pool tables down in Wallsend. Good local firms, so check them out, qtechshop.co.uk. Big thank you to them. And lads,
before we start, Steve,
yes,
can I just tell you that my dog doesn't like the opening music? It makes him bad.
That's a classic.
The opening music now should be "Who Let the Dogs Out."
I'll tell you what. I've got a picture that'll frighten her and calm her down. Here you go.
Oh my word, that'll set him right off.
Good God, that's upset more than Malcolm's dog.
Yeah, man. I knew he had benders one afternoon a week. And that's taken it a bit far.
That was in the boardroom just before the St. Joelinton, I think.
Well, it should have been just after the St. Joelinton.
Anyway, lads, we've been accused of being doommongers in the past, but we've all had good reason to be like that. But look, first two games. Let's start off on a positive. West Ham, first of all, let's look back at that. Away from home, I think I predicted a 2-2 draw, but I think there was wins predicted by you guys, and we did it.
I said 2 each as well, Steve.
You went 2-2, yeah. I think John predicted a win. It's a comprehensive win, wasn't it, Malcolm?
I thought so, yes. Other than the fact that West Ham did hit the bar twice, but we can come on to that in a little while. But overall, I was very impressed, and in particular with the 3 new players that were in the side, the 3 signings. I thought they were all absolutely terrific. Yeah.
I did as well. I mean, the beauty of the game at the weekend, Malcolm, and this speaking to somebody who, graced the number 9, graced St James's Park and wore the number 9 shirt with pride, is we finally got a forward who knows what he's doing. He's running into the channels. He's creating opportunities. If anything, he was probably too far ahead of his teammates, as in intelligence-wise, because they're probably that used to not finding anybody up there.
That's right. They're not having that kind of movement up front, but the beauty about Premiership quality players is that they adapt very quickly, and they will adapt to him. He sort of lit the whole thinking of the midfield and the back line, and it's such a great confidence boost when you see that kind of movement up front and somebody who's willing to get the ball, turn, run at defenders, have a go at goal, and the confidence that we're going to start to see oozing from the midfield and from the back line. I am thoroughly looking forward now to future games. Whereas after the first game of the last few seasons, I'm thinking, oh no, it's going to be a long old season. But this time, I am looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. John, Callum Wilson absolutely stole the show alongside the other signing, Lewis. I thought he was superb as well. Both played really well against West Ham. What was your take on that game first and foremost?
And Hendrick as well, of course, Steve. Jeff Hendrick.
Yes, Hendrick as well, yeah.
I thought he played well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was delighted. The amazing thing with Callum Wilson is that he just played like a proper centre forward. But we are so used with not having a proper centre forward, having had Joelinton, having had Joselu at all, that we were absolutely delighted to get somebody that led the line in the way that he ought to lead the line. And in fairness, and we have been critical in the past, I felt that Andy Carroll did an awful lot to help Wilson on the day, because he took the physical strikes, He got put himself about. He amazingly lasted 90 minutes as well. And I think he took the physical role, which allowed Wilson to run off him and do all the right things. Wilson's unquestionably the number one man, but me having said what I've said about Andy in the past, having said that, of course, he was lucky to still be on the field after the first 10 minutes when he twice led with his elbow on high balls and rested gently on someone's head as he tried to get to the height he wanted to get to. But it did. Yeah. If he can stay fit, Malcolm, and if he can control the way he plays, because he's on a yellow card and then a red card all the time. And he misses enough games through injury for us not to want him to miss them through suspension. Sure. But he contributed. Wilson was great. Hendrick was an assist and a goal. The left back played like a left back, and he overlapped tremendously. And I've said before, we will tend, because the win was so good and because the two of the new lads got the goals, we will tend to overlook Saint-Maximin, who I thought was outstanding again. And just because he's been here one season, let's not forget him. He's only 23. He's very exciting. He gets us up the park quickly. And he is the one where Carroll and Wilson will terrify defenders because they don't know how to handle him. The bloke that will really terrify people running with the ball is Saint-Maximin. And the number of times he was fouled shows how people looked at him as a danger.
Yeah. Absolutely. I saw quotes from Steve Bruce about Andy Carroll, and he was congratulating Andy on having sort of come in at the very start of pre-season training, and he said he was really fit. It was the fittest he had seen him. He had obviously worked right the way through from the end of last season, and so well done on that, Andy. And that suggests to me that he wants the big time on a permanent basis, literally on a match by match basis. He's not wanting to sit out at all, and so it really cheered me up about him, because he's got so much ability, and he's a frightening beast as well out on the pitch to defenders. And I think that Newcastle United, with him in the side, and also the partnership that I saw very quickly being built with Callum Wilson, I thought there is something really powerful beginning here in the West Ham game, and I think there a number of other players in the side were seeing this, and they were wanting to get forward. They were wanting to take part. They were wanting to be a part of it. There were one or two who didn't fancy it, and I have to say I was quite disappointed. I wasn't all that impressed with Shelvey, I have to say, and Hayden. I couldn't find him. I just couldn't find him at all. And I kept scratching my head saying, well, but he was on the team sheet. I'm sure he was on the team sheet. And I couldn't find him out there on the pitch. You know, as the camera sort of moved about on the pitch following the ball, I was thinking, well, where is Hayden? And I sort of just mentioned to people, what did you think of Hayden's performance? And they're all seeing it pretty much the same as I did. He's not a player that I've fancied that much. And I think that Steve has got to start looking for a replacement. And whether Sean Longstaff will be that, I'm really not sure just at the moment.
Darren disagrees with you, Malcolm. He says Shelvey and Hayden were controlling the midfield.
Didn't see it myself. I thought that others were getting there and making things happen. I wasn't overly impressed with the centre of midfield, I have to say.
Yeah, John, what's your take on that? Then you've heard Malcolm's views. What was your take on the midfield? It's an area where Steve Bruce is spoiled for choice. I think he probably just has to find the right combination. So he started off with Shelvey and Hayden. Was that right?
I can understand why he did that. I was disappointed, particularly with Shelvey on the day, because you think he's got more than he showed. And I do think long term that you will find that Hendrick will be moved into one of those central positions when we get Ryan Fraser up to speed, and on the wing, Hendrick, who played out wide, will be moved into one of the two central positions. Yes, there's bodies there, like the two Longstaffs, Borleza, who was given a game, etc., etc. There's bodies for those central midfield, but we've got to decide who's going to play where. But I think Hendrick, I'm not necessarily talking about Brighton this weekend, but Hendrick will be moved into centre midfield when Fraser is up to pace and comes in on the wing.
I would agree with Stephen Parker, who says Hendrick took a lot of pressure off Hayden and saved his backside a few times. Davy Falp, hi Davy, he goes, Malcolm, Hayden does the work that never gets comments done on. It's a funny one with Hayden, because I've got to be honest, somebody who wanted to leave the club, Malcolm, like Hayden, under Rafa, and then suddenly changed his mind under Bruce. There was obviously something going on there which we'll never know. It was down to personal issues, and then he changed. Obviously then he stayed. But I'm not a huge fan of Shelvey, I've got to be honest. But Bruce seems to be getting the best he can get out of Shelvey. So maybe it's just horses for courses, Malcolm. Maybe it's just horses for courses this season.
I don't think Shelvey's game is helped having Hayden alongside. At the same time, I think that Shelvey, all too often, he wants to play in a very deep role. Well, if we've got two, or let's say a very lively forward line, because with St Maximin getting forward as well, and that creates a three, then what we need is Shelvey right there in support. And I think he's loath to do that. I think he wants to sit back in front of the centre halves and not let the back four push out as they would like to do. And because the forward line is looking lively, it will show Shelvey up, I think. He needs to play with the forward line, not sitting back and saying, here's a 60-yard ball.
I think two things, Malcolm, and I'm with you totally on what you're saying. Two interesting things about that centre midfield partnership for me. I think one of the troubles, Malcolm, with Shelvey is that he can't get round the pitch quick enough. So that when he gets up in support and tries to get round the edge of the box and do things, he hasn't got the legs to do that, and he feels vulnerable and he's going to get caught out. So it is easier for him to sit in front of two centre halves and ping the ball about. That's not what his game should be about. I think that's one of his problems, Malcolm, is his lack of mobility to get around the pitch. As far as the Hayden thing's concerned, Steve, one of the interesting things is that he's saying, we've talked about the change in attitude of him with Benitez to Bruce. But I think a lot of it is not to do with the two managers, but to do with the fact that his personal situation has worked out very different. With his wife and his young one, and he had great difficulty with the young one early doors with little problems, and it looked as if he would have to go and live in the south near his wife's family, which would help look after the little one when he was away playing. Now his wife and child's up here with him in Newcastle. They all love the area. the little girl settled down, and therefore his life settled down. And I think that has brought, I'm not talking about his form or what he can do or not on the field, but that's changed his attitude towards staying at Newcastle long term and looking to have to get away. His personal situation is very different now.
Yeah, I would agree with Dwayne. Says Shelvey's just too lazy. He loses the ball, just stands there. He's got no drive to chase the ball and try and get it back. But look, that's Shelvey. He's what you need in the team. A bit of creativity. We don't have that. He's probably the only creative player in there, unless we can get Almiron to play that kind of role. And that brings us nicely to last night's game, Malcolm. Obviously, we knew there would be changes. It's the League Cup. Nobody plays the full strength 11 in the League Cup. Last night was a great opportunity to give those players who didn't get a run out in the first game a chance to shine. I think what I got out of last night's game, and certainly on our NUFC Matters Facebook group, I put a poll up last night. Gillespie won by a country mile, man of the match. The people were quite impressed with Gillespie. A Geordie, of course, who used to travel on the back page, travel buses to Newcastle's games. And everyone was impressed with Fraser. Yes, he's lacking a bit of match fitness, but that lovely through ball from Almiron, and he put a couple through last night, which, unfortunately, the other two didn't quite come off due to who he fell to. But yeah, that finish from Fraser, it was a sign of good things to come. So, yeah, what was your take on last night's game?
Well, it was a bit like an after the Lord Mayor's show for me, and I just didn't feel that players were firing in the right direction. They weren't. And I was looking at individual players, and there are one or two seriously standing out as just not good enough at all. And you have a couple of those in a side, and it can quite demoralise the players who are doing well, and drag them down. And I'm afraid I'm now getting to the stage where I think that Joelinton is actually within Newcastle United. I think he's gone more than a step too far in his poor performances, and I can't see how on earth he's ever going to be able to turn it round. I just can't see it.
I've given him a clean sheet. I've said everyone starts with a clean slate at the start of this season. I've given Joelinton 10 games to prove himself. That's what I've said. John, Joelinton didn't have a great deal to do on, at West Ham last night. He played the majority of the game. What was your view on Joelinton?
View hasn't changed from day one. Joelinton is not a centre forward. There's lots of things he's not, but the biggest thing he's not is a centre forward. I mean, talking to Malcolm about what we saw last night, and this involves Joelinton, was, as far as I was concerned, we saw last night why Newcastle had to make 5 signings this summer, because what we went back to was virtually last season's team. We went back to Joelinton, Almiron, Sean Longstaff, Yedlin, Clark, Kraft, Ritchie. All the players that played last year, we'll put them. That was our first team last year. We'll put them together again against Blackburn, and they looked second raters. They told us why we needed Callum Wilson, why we needed Jeff Hendrick, why we needed the left back, why we need Fraser, because they weren't up to it. And that's the frightening bit. That team last night had 10 changes, and you can't say with 10 changes, did Steve Bruce take the League Cup seriously, or the domestic cups, to make as many changes as that? When those numbers were made by Rafa, it was said we were not treating the cup seriously. But he put out what on paper was a strong side, only it wasn't, because it was the side that got us into a relegation fight last season. And for me, Joelinton was Joelinton. He showed if we didn't know the value of Callum Wilson after West Ham, and we did, we certainly know the value of Callum Wilson after watching Joelinton last night. He should never play as a line leader again if he's got any future at Newcastle. And at the moment, I can't see a future, but it would have to be on the left side where he played all the games in Germany. And, you know, we've got players for those positions. It is frightening. And one of our lovely listeners a little while back put on a message. Isn't it amazing? This was after I had mentioned Saint-Maximin. Isn't it amazing that Saint-Maximin and Wilson, you would have still got change out of the Joelinton money for buying those two? Look at the talent of those two, and yet their joint fee is a few mils short of Joelinton's fee. That's frightening.
A lot of people saying when Joelinton plays, it's if we're playing with 10 men. I mean, I called this last year. You know, maybe I was a bit, you know, I felt a lot of people felt I was being too harsh on Joelinton. Give him time. He needs to settle in. He's a Brazilian. He's young. He's this, he's that, he's the other. But for me, he's not young. He's over 20, and he should have really hit. You know, the price tag's not his fault, but you know, he should have really bedded in by now. And look, I'm not gonna have a go at him. I said let's see what happens after 10 games. I think I've already seen after 2 games where we're at with Joelinton. I know he hasn't played both games, but it's sad. It's sad. You know, sometimes it doesn't work out for players at a football club. We've seen it with other players in the past. You know, we all know. You know, John Dahl Thomason went on. Different circumstances, it has to be said. Andy was a good player, but he went on to win the Champions League. Stefan Givosh arrived at Newcastle as a World Cup winner, but he was atrocious at Newcastle. Sometimes it doesn't work. I think the most frustrating thing about Joelinton has to be it just looks like lack of effort. It doesn't. Maybe there is a player in there. You know, maybe what Mick Tate and Steve Nixon saw in Joelinton was worth 40 million to them, but I just. At the moment, I just don't see how. And somebody asked earlier on there, Malcolm, is it time to bring somebody in like a Malcolm MacDonald, like an Alan Shearer, to sit down, talk to him, take him through things? You either have it or you don't. And I don't think you can teach hard work.
Well, no. You can help somebody to be far more aware of what's required from a forward in and around the penalty area. Does he really want to know, though? You see, you can't put it into somebody to have a desire. They've got to have that desire in the first place, and with that desire, I or Alan Shearer or whoever can then work with the guy to satisfy that desire by making him better at scoring goals, better at taking chances, and so on and so forth. But I just don't see the desire. Let me go back to last season, and I've said this before, but it's a very important thing that I noticed over the whole season about Joelinton. He scored 2 goals. Both goals came in very similar fashion. That he went woof. He got the ball to start with, some 30 yards out, knocked it off, turned and went and just flew at goal. And then the ball works its way, and all of a sudden it finds itself in front of him on his run. And he scored both times. Having done that, he never made the run again other than those 2 occasions. Never made a sprint from 30 yards out to say, right, I'm going to get into it. And then I saw, I've seen loads of comments from supporters who, and journalists as well, who have watched both the West Ham game and the Blackburn game last night, and they are all making the comment that Joelinton doesn't sprint. Well, tell me, a forward who doesn't sprint, you're never going to score goals if you're not prepared just to get that fraction of an inch in front of the centre half. And to do that, You have to sprint, you have to barge, you have to use your weight and your body, and you have and if you stay behind, the ball will never come to you, never, ever, ever. And if you hang out outside of the penalty area, well, then you're never going to be in on the action, are you?
Bizwidget's asking you a question, Mal.
Describing Joelinton. Sorry, Steve. Yeah.
That question from Bizwidget's the same as Il Corvo. How many more chances would you give Joelinton if you were Steve Bruce? I don't want to continue on the Joelinton thing, but just answer that question. You know, when do you accept that he's not good enough, as Il Corvo's saying? You know, what do you do as Steve Bruce now?
I think Steve Bruce missed the trick when he didn't get rid of him during the break between the seasons. I really do.
Wait. He could still get rid of him. He could still get rid of him now. I mean, there's been rumours of Fenerbahce sniffing around and stuff like that.
Well, fine. I would push it on Fenerbahce and say how much you be prepared to offer, and I would seriously be prepared to take 50% of what they paid for him.
I think you'd be lucky to get that.
That'd be very lucky, but. You know, if you start off at that and see if you're able to bring in 50%, because Newcastle United so overpaid on Joelinton. I cannot think of another example throughout the time of the Premier League, 20 years almost now. I just can't think. Well, no, sorry, Nick, approaching 30 years. I can't think of a complete waste of money as Joelinton is proving to be.
Yep. John, question for you on the screen there about the Sunday Supplement. It's, of course, a programme on Sky where they get journalists on from different areas. And John Mitchelton's asking, have you been asked to ever appear on there, and would you go on?
I haven't been asked to appear on there. I would go on, but I won't get the opportunity now because I think they've ditched the thing as part of all the things that are happening within Sky. Sorry, man?
Yeah,
they've ditched it, Malcolm, in the way that they ditched.
Right. Well, John, I was really sad that they have ditched it because... come on, you press guys, you've got people talking to you all the time. You carry a whole load of information that you have to be very careful how you use, because people will talk to you off the record and what have you. But you have a knowledge that nobody else carries. And I think that, and that's what I found fascinating about that program, that you could just pick up little nuggets that were being hinted at. You know, they weren't saying for a fact, but it was just little nuggets, and I found it a mine of information. And for it to disappear, what are they going to replace it with? Heaven only knows.
Yeah, it is a sadness. I thought it was fascinating. Go on, Steve, mate.
Go on, John. I just want to know about the players. A lot of people asking, you know, is there any more talk of Newcastle bringing in players? I mean, you know, I would do our business early. You know, is there any sniffs of maybe some more players? I think a lot of fans who watch our show are screaming out for another forward because they can see the frailties after last night that, you know, should Wilson get injured, we know his injury record's not great, that should Wilson get injured, we'll be back to square one relying on Andy Carroll and Joelinton, which of course didn't do too well last season.
Yeah, well, I've been pushing that with my articles in the Chronicle. We can't afford to be complacent. And if I got anything out of a very tepid display last night, is that it might, Ashley and Charnley might look at it, at the pressing of Steve Bruce at them and say, yeah, we're not as safe as we thought we were when we beat West Ham because of that very reason. If we get injuries, we are back to the up front that was absolutely pop guns last season. And I know that Bruce wants to bring in a centre-half and a centre-forward. He tried Rob Holding, as you know, and that deal's off now. And there is an awareness we need a centre forward. I don't think we'll spend any more money. I think what we'll find is that we'll try to get these two signings on a season-long loan. To a certain extent, it depended on getting players off the wage bill as well. And it looks as if we're going down that road with Lejeune going out and Muto going out. There's talk today that Yedlin could well go out before the transfer deadline back over to the States to play in America. But we need another centre forward, another striker. There's absolutely no question. And not because Muto's left, because he only scored 2 goals in the whole time he was here. But we do need other players. We cannot expect the team that played at West Ham to go through a whole season being able to play together. Absolutely no chance. So we've got to get some more in. It would be a folly and it would be undoing of all the good work that's just been done if we don't do that.
Ian Chisholm's got it right. He says we must be the only club in history that bought 2 Brazilians that couldn't play football, Fullback and Joelinton. That sums it all up, doesn't it?
We
really?
did. We did. And if you put Mirandina in, who could score goals, but he's second, he couldn't trap a bag of cement, then we must have got all the Brazilians that haven't got a touch. We take it as read that Brazilians have got a touch. Even Brazilian goalkeepers can play the ball at the feet better than Joelinton. But we don't sign those guys. We get the other ones. It's the same as with managers, you know, guys. We if you say Newcastle United have employed Ruud Gullit, Kenny Dalglish, Ozzy Ardiles, etc., Graham Souness, and think, what shouldn't have been magnificent. Unfortunately, we got those guys all as managers, not as players. Those guys were wonderful players, not such clever managers. We waited until they were managers to get them.
We've managed to get rid of Muto today. Obviously, he's gone to Spanish side Eibar on loan. We've got rid of Lejeune as well. So at least we've managed to get rid of some of the deadwood. Still have a couple of others to get rid of. But the transfer window is open until the start of October. So there's still time for more business, which is positive, Malcolm. And I'm sure you'd like to see maybe at least another striker coming in, possibly a creative midfielder. And I think at least somebody to come in and give Manquillo a run for his money at right back. Because, I mean, I think Manquillo's done well. I mean, fair play to him last night. He had to play in left back position last night, but I thought he did equally well last night in a poor game, it has to be said. But, ultimately from our perspective, we've got a good solid right back there. We just need a little bit of backup, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Manquillo, the thing I like about him, at times can finish up to be his undoing. As a right back, he's prepared to really get forward so that he's almost in a right wing position when midfield players are looking to play it forward and wide. But it's when he's back there, and at times he doesn't defend too well at times, getting near to the dead ball line. And I think that we could do with a good defender who wants to get forward. And Manquillo is only half of that. I quite like him, but it's more for what he does going forward. Mind, they've left the young lad. Oh dear me, forgetting his name now. On the left-hand side, and he's played at in the middle of defence, and he's played at left back. Oh dear, he's left-footed lad. Oh, what's his name?
Dummett.
Yes, Dummett. Thank you. Sorry, Paul Dummett. You know that with Paul Dummett, best defender in the club, without any hesitation from me to say so. Best defender, but it's what he hasn't got going forward. Going forward is a real labour for him. and he's not. You can see he's not comfortable there. You know, a bit like Frank Clark. But in the Premiership, the demands of what it is now are that a fullback has got to be able to defend and then fly forward, and when they cross the halfway line, know what they're doing, be able to accomplish it, and I'm afraid that we haven't got people who can do the right things in both halves. Although I have to say, I thought that Lewis, I was quite impressed with him. I've heard one or two comments before the West Ham game that said, "Oh, he's not the best of defenders" or whatever. But I was quite impressed with the lad, both the way he defended and the way in which he got forward.
Yeah,
so
me
I'm
too.
looking forward to seeing more of him.
John, have you seen anything of this young lad that they've got in training, the Florent in Dalesio, who was in training today? I mean, there's a goal circulating on the internet that he scored in training. Yeah. He's on trial at the minute.
I saw the goal that's on the internet, and I mean, a terrific from a corner overhead kick, met it as sweet as you like, and rifled into the back of the net at some pace. Interesting, because you can look, he's got a record, he's got talent. Of that, there's absolutely no question whatsoever. What he's also got is a huge bad boy reputation, like you had, the kid Morrison that was at Manchester United that then went all over the place on his, on his talent, but always had the bad boy thing that went with it. Initially, if we go far enough back, the lad at Newcastle United, Ranger, who was a talented player but had a different bad boy image. This kid has ruined his career so far, which is why he was chucked out in France. His talent's unquestioned. Has the penny dropped that if he doesn't do something quickly, he's going to end up just being on the scrap heap, a very talented has-been. That's what's open to conjecture. Talent's there, abilities there, bad boys there. Has the penny dropped? If it is, Newcastle might cash in. If it isn't, then he's going to sadly go down the route that we've seen a lot of players go down.
Malcolm, last question on Joelinton there from Stephen Parker. He says, do you think he's got a balance problem? He always ends up on his backside.
Yeah, a lot of the time, yes, he does. And my answer to that is, I don't think so much it's balance. He looks to me to be about 13.5 stone. But when it comes to a challenge, he goes in like an 8.5 stone guy. And so he's always going to get clattered all the time. He's not really putting himself in. What you want to see is a centre forward who's prepared to knock a centre half about. But with Joelinton, it's the other way around. It's the centre halves who are knocking him all over the place. And I don't think it's balance. I don't think he's got the desire to use the whole of his weight, the whole of his strength, and really go in and clatter somebody. I think he pussyfoots his way into things.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Thanks for all your questions on Joelinton. I know we'll get a few complaints of people saying, "Oh, not Joelinton again." And I have tried to calm down on Joelinton. But unfortunately,
we didn't talk about him if he played well.
Unfortunately, well, yeah, we'll just be waxing lyrical about him scoring a hat trick, etc. Which one day it might happen. Gary Barnes says, "Evening, guys. What are your views on how we play and our sub 40% possession stat?" Now, yeah, the possession last night was again, reduced team, giving people a run out, but after 20 minutes, the percentage of possession was Blackburn 83%, Newcastle 17%. And then obviously towards, when the final stats came up for the game, I might be a couple of percent out here, so don't quote us, but I think it was round about 69% for Blackburn. and 31% for Newcastle. It wasn't great. So John, percentage does it matter if you get the goal and they don't?
I think it does, because we sometimes forget that we are in the entertainment profession. Football is an entertainment, and you're not going to entertain your home crowd, and I know they're not there, but they're watching on telly, if you very rarely have the ball. So in an ideal world, it does matter. But I go back, Steve, you were quoting figures from last night in Malcolm. I go back to what I said early on. We fielded our first team from last season last night, and the percentage figures were all like that last season. We played on the break, not having had the ball, and tried to do some damage on the break. I'm hoping now that with San Maximum, with Wilson, with Fraser when he comes in, with Hendrick, with Almiron as the backup, that we're going to have more of the ball, be quicker, and do things with it, so that our percentage figures will go up this season when we field the side we want to field, as compared with last night's side and compared with last season's side. I think the figures will improve. They've got to improve, because it lots of times last season, guys, we got results out of nothing. Didn't we? We got 3 points sometimes out of nothing, out of a poor display, out of a 94th minute goal from Isaac Hayden. Who expected that against Chelsea, etc., etc.? We got out of jail time and time again. We can't expect to get out of jail regularly all this season that way. But I've got to hope that these new lads will produce a better set of figures this season. Albeit, I'll accept that, by Jove, we started the season with the perfect match, because West Ham are horrible. If they manage not to go down, they'll have done a Houdini, because unless they bring an awful lot of people in, Malcolm, between now and October the 5th, they're doomed. They're walking in dead man's shoes. So we had a terrific game to start with. There'll be more of a balance on Sunday, because Brighton are better than West Ham, but Brighton are not Manchester City. They're not Liverpool. They're not Arsenal or Chelsea. So this match is winnable to us, and we've got to win it. But I think our percentages will be better this season, as long as we can keep fit.
Right. But one of the main reasons why we're seeing the percentages last night, and that's looking back to last season's team, and the percentages were quite different against West Ham. One of the reasons is that there's a forward line, and so the ball can be played forward, it can be held up, players push out, and instead of playing around your own penalty area, the side that we saw against West Ham, they're playing heading for the West Ham penalty area. Last season, we hardly saw the back four be able to get pushed out of the penalty area by a few yards or more. And so, of course, what you're doing is you're just banging it out and giving the ball away, and the opposition then come playing the ball at you again. This is why Shelvey, he really should wake up to what's happening, because he used to almost play between the two centre halves a lot last season. He should be pushing up and looking to be the supply man to the two forwards, not with 60-yard passes, but with 10-yard passes. And he'd be terrific at doing that. And then the other guy just sits back a little and covers the fact that Shelvey's so far forward. Whether he's got the legs to be able to do that on a constant basis, we'll have to see. But last night, it reverted back to the style of play and the same mentality of last season. And it was having to suck the air in and defend once more. And well, the number of times that we saw sides doing what Blackburn did last night, doing last season to Newcastle, getting possession in excess of 80%. That's a nonsense to be giving away the ball for 4/5 of the time. And so I think that as much as anything, the players that played last night, they've got to have a serious think about what their attitude to going out and playing the game is. Because we saw one attitude down in London against West Ham and a totally different attitude last night. What we need to do is get them to marry together, but with the West Ham game in mind, not last night.
Yeah. Let's move on to Mike Ashley, and I won't show that photograph again. Martin Sutton says, what does John and Mark think about Ashley taking legal action, and do you think it will go as far as court? John?
Very interesting, very interesting. It tells us one thing. Isn't this guy desperate to sell? And aren't we very appreciative of that fact? I think he sees this consortium as the only viable people that might meet the asking price and be able to conclude a deal, because we've had so many fly-by nights, the American guy, the Singapore cousins, etc., that he sees this as the only viable thing on the table for the foreseeable future. And do I think it can go as far as court, bearing in mind that it's Ashley that would be taking the Premier League to the court and not the Saudis in any way? I think it can, because that's the sort of thing Mike Ashley does. He's stubborn, he gets his teeth into things, he doesn't care about ruffling feathers, he's indifferent to protocol, etc., I think it could well go to court. And it would then be interesting to see what come out of the woodwork. I'm not certain that the Premier League would wish it to go to court, but in a way, he's trumped what they said, which was, let's go to arbitration to the prospective buyers who wouldn't take arbitration. But this is almost like forcing an arbitration between Ashley and the league. I think it could go to court. The interesting thing is, through all this procedure, will the Saudis, and I'm not talking about Amanda, and I'm not talking about the Reuben brothers, I'm talking about the Saudi part of the takeover, which is the main part, because it's the 80% part, will they stay absolutely committed to Newcastle United during all this procedure, which might take some time with court, or will they say, we have been humiliated by the league, by who won't believe us, or effectively calling us liars, etc., and they were very proud people? Will they accept that and still come back, or will they say, excuse me, you've slurred us, we're off, good night, thank you very much, we don't want to know this? That is something that hasn't really been considered. I know that Amanda, and I'm certain you would agree, Steve, will be there because she wants to be there and she wants it to happen. The Reuben brothers, I'm pretty certain, might be. Whether the Saudis, who are 80% of the deal, will still have as much enthusiasm after the way they perceive they've been treated is what worries me. But can I see it go to court? With Mike Ashley doing the pushing, yes, I can.
Yes,
yeah,
me too. I would agree with both of you on that. But whatever the outcome, by the time it gets to court, the Saudi Arabians will have forgotten all about Newcastle United. So what it's actually going to achieve, I'm really not sure. Because if the Saudis don't come back in fairly promptly, they'll just forget it and move on to something else, or another football club or whatever, to another country. But I can't see what good it would do Newcastle United. I don't think it would do any, in fact.
Yeah,
Malcolm, I couldn't agree more with you on that, mate. But I think from Ashley's point of view, and you've got to remember, he is an original thinker. He doesn't necessarily think like us. I think the bottom line for Ashley might just be that, I tell you what, if this doesn't happen with the Saudis, either because they've walked away and won't come back or whatever, the next person that tries to buy Newcastle United, I bet the Premier League won't object to it, having had all the flack they'll have had over this. I think that Ashley can see that. Let them turn down the next Newcastle United deal.
Yeah.
Quick one for you, lads.
That's a very good point, John. Very good.
Quick one for you, Wayne Bennett's question. Gillespie or Darlow, who's your first choice keeper at this moment in time with Dubravka out, Malcolm, after seeing both of them play 90 minutes?
I need to see a bit more of Gillespie. But I have to say that I was quite disappointed in the West Ham game with Darlow. I thought that for one of the West Ham attempts that hit the bar, that Darlow went very, very late. It literally hit the bar just up there, and Darlow he didn't go for half a second, and in the end it's hit the bar. Darlow got nowhere near it. And he knew it, because he came down and was just by the post, and the expression on his face told me that he thought that he should have got it and didn't get near it.
Yeah.
So when I see things like that, I get very edgy about a goalkeeper, because they really are the one position you've got to be spot on all the time. You want your keeper on absolute top form. You can't tolerate somebody who's not. Now, what the problem is with Darlow, I'm not too sure, because I've not seen that hesitancy in him previously. But I was quite worried and concerned with the West Ham game. But it might just be a one-off, and I think that you've got to stick him in the side again, and we can judge further on him, but never make a decision on just one game on anybody.
No. What about you then, John?
Well, the interesting thing on the goalkeeping situation, and I agree with Malcolm, I would want to see a little bit more of Gillespie before I make up my mind. But there's one question on what we would do as individuals, and then there's another question on what Newcastle United will do. And I said in this discussion before we played at West Ham that Steve Bruce would go with Darlow as his first choice at West Ham, and he will unquestionably stick with that. There's no question about that. This guy's just signed a new long-term contract at Newcastle as the backup to Dubravka. Now, neither of these goalkeepers are as good as Dubravka, if that we can say with certainty. But he will stay with Darlow this weekend. He signed a long-term contract as a number 2. And I actually think, despite what Mal and I and you, Steve, have all talked about the possible team and the centre midfield, I will be staggered if Steve Bruce, who's the one that matters because he's going to pick the team, doesn't go with exactly the same 11 starting that played at West Ham, because he'll see that result, see it happening, see what he saw last night, The only possible change I think Steve Bruce would think about making is whether Ryan Fraser is ready yet. And while he scored a superb goal, beautifully made by Almiron, I think he looked as if he was blowing a little bit last night. His touch wasn't quite there. He hasn't played since the beginning of March. I think he'll be used on Sunday off the bench. He's not quite ready to start yet. And so I think this team that will be put out on Sunday at 2:00 will be the exact 11 that started at West Ham. It's not whether it's my opinion they should. I think they will.
As Martin says, good test coming for Lewis on Sunday versus Lamperty of Brighton on the left-hand side. Steve Bennett on the goalkeeper thing says he still thinks long-term Woodman is the answer, obviously out on loan. Jonathan Wallace thinks Gillespie, he prefers Gillespie. It's all about opinions. I think Malcolm says give the lads a few more games before we can really decide on who fills that gap. Last thing we want to talk about, lads. Time is always against us. Yeah, it's always a quick fire hour. Let's look ahead to that game, Malcolm. Of course, Brighton at the weekend. Newcastle played two clean sheets, 2 wins. Hoping to make it 3 to get off to like a perfect, a perfect start. It's another tough game, as Martin's already pointed out. Lamperty's going to be a test for Lewis, but do you think it'll be an unchanged team first and foremost, and how do you see the game going at the weekend?
Yeah, providing there's been no injuries. Yes, I will play exactly the same team. I think it's only very rarely do you change a winning side. It's got to be a very good tactical reason or whatever. And so I would play exactly the same side, and I want to see those players starting to really mold and blend together. For me, the 3 new players did ever so well. Now that the older Newcastle players, the guys that have already been here some while, I want to see them blending with the new faces. You've had a good look for 90 minutes. Now get in there and create mayhem against the opposition altogether. So I'd stick with the same side for sure.
Okay, Mal, prediction for the game?
Well, I really had that feeling that Newcastle were going to score goals at West Ham, but I didn't have the faith in the defence. Maybe I should. So I'm going to go for Newcastle getting a win, and it's going to be the same as West Ham. I'm going to go for 2-0.
2-0. Okay, that's your prediction. John, over to you.
Yeah, I agree with Malcolm. I think Newcastle will win. I think Brighton will provide a tougher opposition than West Ham.
They will.
Without a shadow of a doubt, Malcolm, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. I was going to say what Malcolm said was 2-0, but I thought then, can I see Newcastle United keeping 3 clean sheets on the bounce? And I thought, no, that's a little bit fantasy island, so I'm going for 2-1.
So you're going for 2-1. I've got to be honest, I am feeling slightly optimistic because I think there will be essentially a bit of a bounce in that squad. I think we've already seen it. The new players have certainly, with their little debut songs in front of everybody, stand on the chair and that kind of thing. There seems to be just a bit of a feel good atmosphere in that squad. So yeah, I'm going to go for 2-1 as well. I don't think there'll be a clean sheet. I think Newcastle will win. A lot of big predictions here, 4-0, etc. But I think genuinely Newcastle could win and make it another good day. Toon Fan has put this up. We'll let you have the final say. He says 3-0 at the weekend. Joelinton hat-trick.
Always good to finish on a joke.
Leave him with a joke, Malcolm. Always leave him with a joke.
Lads, have a good week. Look forward to speaking to you next Wednesday. Take care.
All right. Enjoy it on the weekend.
Lovely to see you.